But what about the love of it? I mean, I sort of said to you there that I just never thought I'd do anything but broadcast, and that was always because it was a sort of a deep rooted passion. I was always that kid who put my hand up in class and insisted on reading every chapter of the book in any one lesson, which much to the amusement of all my friends and pals who'd be like, "Yeah, you crack on. We're fine just sitting here not doing it." But
Well done. Carry on.
what was it for you? I mean, was it because you obviously had this great passion, which was tennis, and had fulfilled so much in that area of your life? But then, what next? As with every sports person, what happens after the curtain comes down on a playing career? What do you do next? How did that transition happen?
Well, the transition happened because I met Sophia in Japan. She was working on the airlines, and as she would call herself, and all her mates from those days still call themselves as trolley dollies. So we all met down the line at the Japan Open. The official hotel was the same hotel as Qantas, Japan Airlines, who she was working for. So their lounge was a big double room downstairs, right near reception. It had teas and coffees, and everybody chain smoked, and it was just the social hub of the place, right? And in Tokyo is a long way. So I'd met Sophia, and completely and utterly fallen for her, and it's like, I can't keep playing. I can't keep being ranked, 100 in the world forever. And we got married. We went away on a honeymoon for 3 weeks, and then I came back, and 2 weeks later I had to play Wimbledon. And it's like, this was clearly not right. And it was around this time that I got slightly, because I hadn't earned success by this stage. It was just treading water. I mean, I was having trouble with my ball toss. I couldn't believe it. I've served probably 10 million tennis balls. I've thrown the ball up and hit it, and the ball was falling out of my hand the wrong way. And it was just, look, all the signs were there. It's definitely time to do something else. And Sky came along, and it all sort of transitioned at the same time. I'll tell you what it was. I was playing in Berlin, and we played Peter Korda and I think Goran Ivanisevic in the doubles one day. And I'd lost in the singles, but we'd won that one. And that night, Jerry Williams and Bill Threlfall, who are just great broadcasters and voices and wonderful people, they said, "Oh, what are you doing tonight?" It was Jerry Williams who really instigated it. And he said, "Do you want to come and do some commentary on this, on maybe one set later on?" So I got back to the hotel, got changed, came back, loved the mic. Oh my God, it was thrilling. I mean, just for tennis commentary, no more. But I absolutely adored it. And of course, I had all the latest knowledge. I've been on court with half of these guys earlier on in the day. And everyone said, "Oh, that's very good." Well, it's hardly a surprise. I've literally come straight off the court, but it's very kind of them to give me an opportunity. And it led on to other things. And it was in the times, 92, 93, 94, when things were really beginning to sort of head the way of the dish, the aerials, or whatever they were. And, things were just widening in a digital sense. Sky were around, and B Sky B, and, there was all Euros. I don't know what was around, but somebody offered me a job. So thank you very much. I'm out of the tennis. Wasn't that hard, especially after losing at the Olympics to Sergi Bruguera on clay. And I was like, there's no future in that. So I started doing I mean, they wanted to pay me money for this. Are you kidding? I used to have to fly around the world and get beaten by somebody. And, it's a hard way to make a living, and it physically hurt, and to be jet lagged virtually the whole time and to not see Sophia. No. You got to do something else, mate. You can't just juggle your investments when you didn't make any money.
And obviously there was so much preparation involved in being the tennis player and going into a match being fully prepared. What about being behind the mic and in the commentary booth? Because I think people just think you pick up the microphone and you just talk. And there is some of that. There absolutely has to be a little bit of that, because you have to be able to be off the cuff and playful. But what about the other stuff? Because when you're sat alongside the likes of John McEnroe and whoever else it may be in there, how do you perceive your true value? How do you perceive yourself to be the best version of it?
Well, tennis, let's be honest now, I mean, or any sports commentary, after doing the news, it's just easy. Okay. And if anybody says anything else, I understand it might be new to some people, or they make it bigger than it is or whatever, but come on, I'm having presented tennis, I mean, which is harder than commentating it. Having done LBC for the last 10 years and having done every major news story, for the last 10 years, which has been truly traumatizing in a personal sense, I promise you. Tennis commentary is easy. And, what we have to... Now, listen, it's easy when you've done something for 35 years, but it's... it should not be a trauma, and I'm determined this year that it's just not a trauma. It's not life and death anymore for me. I think about the audience. My preparation is thorough, but I prepared for my broadcasting far better and more diligently and more professionally and with more dedication than I did with my tennis. I think. I mean, tennis is a long time ago. But my work on TV, you can't get it wrong if you're speaking to, I don't know, Benjamin Netanyahu or whoever, or you can't get it wrong. These things are not something that they should. You try and get it right. Or if you're having a crack at a cabinet minister, you've got to know your stuff. With tennis commentary, if you get it wrong, what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, I'm speaking to people who've got missiles going over their heads half the time at LBC, or at least I was in the last few months. So, it's too big to get wrong. So my preparation is more professional now.
When you say that you sort of that was a period of time which was quite traumatic, it feels like that has had a real resonating impact on you personally, and you've had to sort of step back from that. What does that sort of look like in its worst form?
Oh no, well, I mean I would go as far as to say that without wishing to, everybody in the world has now got something where they've been hit hard with. But I would say, from what I've seen of newsrooms, which is fairly extensive, and being on air, I would say most people have got something akin to a form of, they've been stressed deeply. So we hesitate before we use undiagnosed conditions like PTSD. But if you are heavily stressed, and for instance, a bomb went off. I mean, look, I don't know. I was very, very upset when Putin invaded Ukraine. But more than it was far deeper than just this has happened and I'm going to report it. I can't report stories like that. And with LBC, you have very little script. You're off the cuff. It's just you with guests that are coming up, and you've got messages saying that you're a terrible person coming down the left-hand side. You're curating your own feed. The whole thing is just completely switched on. I mean, your brain is just massively heated the whole time. That's what it felt like. And then when the Ukraine thing happened, that really affected me. I've always been affected by the big personal stories, and you have to throw yourself into a story to deliver it properly. There are great and inspirational stories, which I also love, but the ones that have been, it's pretty hard to take some of this stuff if you really look into what's happened there. And then Israel happened, and I saw a lot of the footage that on the Hamas body cam footage. It's beyond imagining for me. So, and I found myself very heavily affected. Anyway, just to cut a long story short, I was finishing LBC and I was in tears every time, and very, very upset. And some of my behavior around that was probably, would I have had that drink without it, for instance? No. Would I have got angry at this point in the day with someone if I hadn't done that show this morning starting at 5, which I prepared the night before and read for 3 hours? No. So it was affecting me. It's unhealthy. So Ian Dale, who is a very fine broadcaster with LBC, he looked at me, and I think it was November of last year. He looked at me when he was due to come on air after me. He's in the studio. We've got about a 3-minute turnaround. And he's marvelously camp. He sort of strides into the studio, and he says, and he looked at me and he goes, "Andrew," he says, "you look like shit." And I said, "Well, thank you, Ian. I feel like it." And then, because about half an hour before that, I'd started to feel really bad. We had several pro-Palestinian, Hamas supporting calls. And I took them as that. Plus, there were two or three other bits of news that we delivered, and all of it was miserable and depressing. All of it, badly. And so, anyway, and it was at that moment, about 9:35, I said, I just went, I've had enough of this. I'm not getting paid enough for this. I don't feel that I'm not gaining more than I'm losing, right? And that's a simple equation. So anyway, I hugged Ian, which was a big surprise to him and to me. I had no idea. And I went outside, went to Leicester Square, poured my eyes just pouring. I was like, what is going on? Get in the car, short of breath, not feeling good at all. Sophia's on the phone. She says, pull over. I pull over. Knowing London, I'll probably get a ticket. And I just sort of stopped operating the car for a minute. And Sophia said, that's enough now. And that was it. And I never went back. Spoke to my boss about it. Obviously, there are some major loose ends to tie up, like your contract. And I'm like, honestly, I don't care about the contract. So thank you, sincerely. We had a meeting a couple of weeks later with the boss, and I just said, I'm done now, if that's all right. Yeah, and that's okay. So that's the end of that. And it's very cool. It's a great and liberating thing. We are masters of our own destiny. Money has been too much of a driving force. I've said yes to too much. And, you don't have to say yes all the time. But how's that for confessional?
Yeah, that is confession. But could it have ended any other way, or do you think you just wanted out? Did you feel like if you had found a way through it, would you have taken that route, or do you just think actually enough is enough?
I think enough was enough. And I think I can go on forever. And I have done. It was like when I used to play squash. After I finished playing tennis, I played squash for 20 years. And it wasn't until I was on the floor in the middle of the night with sweat pouring out of me, just lying on a cold concrete floor, panting. And, it's not, I mean, I will do that. That's and Sophia recognized it and has done for a long time. But I needed to recognize that. The drive to not be working class, the journey to not being working class anymore is over. And that's not a slight on, it's just money again. My parents were poor and money was always a major issue and the fights were unbelievable. So there's no need to, that fight is over. Was that what it was all about? I mean, amazing, isn't it? Amazing.
It feels like,
years.
exactly, it feels like it's been a process that you've been just sort of treading that path for such a long time. And then eventually, all these things accumulate and bang, it's just that's it. It all bubbles up and explodes.
I'm lucky it wasn't a bigger episode than that. I mean, it's plenty of people in our industry. We're not nose to the grindstone like we were. And you've got the children, so you're still in a very busy phase of your life, and you've got that terrible husband of yours.
Terrible.
So, but it's we're not in that same phase, and the necessity isn't there anymore. If you're given a whole load of love and affection from work, then maybe things would have changed. I'd have carried on a few months, but that wasn't. I didn't really feel that was there, particularly in that particular aspect of my job. It's hard doing news. And, and I miss having an opinion on stuff. I still have opinions, but I couldn't face the prospect of an American election, the UK election, and all the utter bullshit.
And so when your daughter came to you and said, "I want to enter the world of show business," what in the world was your reaction? I mean, most parents would go, that sounds intriguing. But if you've been on the inside of that a little more, you might have a different perspective. I mean, what was your take when she approached you and said, "Dad, this is what I want to do with my life"? And she's now doing incredibly well, doing just that on the West End stage.
Well, she said, this is the older one, Georgie. She goes, she says, "I want to go to drama school." It's very matter of fact. But we didn't realize that she had already had some kind of success and recognition, because I hadn't really been paying attention to that part of her life. She just got on with it. We're happy to support. She went to some stagecoach, and there was various competitions, and she always came back and seems to have won them, and she was always given these roles, and okay, fine. But I always knew she sang kind of nicely, but I didn't realize that she was so serious that she wanted to go to drama school. But it unfolded, and I mean, imagine this, right? So your two come to you in a year. How old are yours?
So Bellatrix is nearly 8 and Fox is nearly 3.
Oh, I've just lost.
But Fox knows exactly what he wants to do. He wants to be a Formula One driver.
Right. Well, he's an idiot then, and so we, without hesitation, we're not going to allow that. But we are, because we know that in 15, 20, 25 years' time, 6 months, whenever it is, if you were to say no, well, how's that going to be for family relations? I mean, it's just, how many people do you know, perhaps women more than men, I don't know, who have come up to a parent years ago and said that they wanted to do something and they were stopped from doing it, actively stopped by their parents. The resentment will be there forever. The one thing that you give your child, isn't it, that is that kind of, you want them to have something. You want them to have a passion and to literally be driven to do something. And then they come along and they are driven to do something, and you say no. Times have changed. But, in the old days, if you said no, the resentments were there forever. So what are you going to say about the F1 stuff?
I'm going to say, I know a person that knows a person that knows a person. I reckon we could get you a go-kart in a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, it's a very long journey, that. And so, who knows whether or not.
But I think there's something, and somebody asked me the other day, and I think it's a really good point. It's like, why is it that people who have been successful in any walk of life, or, certainly in the sports arena, often end up breeding children that then go on to do similar things, or definitely something that requires them to have the tenacity to sort of get there. And I thought about it for a bit, and then I thought, I just wonder if it's something to do with just the attitude that they've grown up in, the house in which they've grown up in, with this sort of can-do positivity around them, that anything's possible, because look, here's the example of it. And I wonder if it's that sort of plays into them. So it doesn't matter that they necessarily have to become another tennis player or another sailor, but there's definitely this understanding that anything is possible. And I think what you said right at the beginning of the pod is completely key to this, is that is a privilege, and it's a completely privileged existence that allows that type of thought, and it's not necessarily just commonplace. It is as a result of surroundings and environment that's allowed to happen and can flourish.
Of course, expectation certainly helps, but expectation. Look, I don't care whether you want to be F1 driver, a professional sports person, whether you want to work in accounts, if you want to be behind a desk, deliver stuff, whatever it happens to be, but just do something and do it positively with energy, and be, contentment comes in a lot of different ways as well. And I know that your children are, sorry, how old are your children?
They're 7 and 2 at the minute.
Oh God, 7 and 2. Do you know? Good luck with everything that is ahead. I mean, it is a fantastic thing to be a parent. I mean, obviously we've got a grandson now who's 2.5, nearly 3. And it's a different thing, obviously, being a grandparent. But I do look at him and the world now, and I go, this is how it is different. But the one thing he's going to have is support. And, as long as we're around, and his parents are doing a great job, and I'm sure you are, it's support and nurturing and love. You give them the tools to cope. And also, bloody be competitive as well. Be competitive. Since when was being competitive a dirty word? I mean, the next 10 years are going to be interesting. I mean, we're sort of heading down I hope we don't go too far down the road of, as long as you participate, you're a winner. Well, just to a degree, that's great. Everyone should participate, have a go, and nobody should be condemned for losing. But, ultimately, being competitive is not dirty. I mean, when I did Strictly, it was like, you couldn't say you were competitive. Well, why? You got to try
Well,
hard.
no,
I'm
no,
not
no, no,
trying to
no,
kill
no, no,
everybody.
no. Andrew, when you did Strictly, did you ever consider
Oh,
yourself
shite.
a very serious competitor on that program? Because if you did,
With me, why can't I put one foot in front of the other? That's my competition. Why can't I? Oh my God, that's a hard program. That is so, so,
was
that
it
is
really
so,
ball
so
breaking?
difficult. Yeah. Well, Ola, my partner Ola, is 5'2", and I was 6'3". I'm probably 6'1" now. But we didn't really, for a start, fit. And whether we were entirely compatible, as we're never going to be best mates. It was an intense thing to do. I was doing GMTV in the morning, and then with Ola all day. She could have used a better partner than me. And I wouldn't. I would. I mean, I certainly congratulate anybody that becomes a national treasure by doing that. I don't know how the hell they do it. I was doing my best to survive minute by minute. It was an unbelievable program. I think it's the
See,
best
I
program
feel
on
like
TV.
our great mutual friend Annabelle Croft has become a national treasure as a result of doing that program.
Well, it was an unfortunate. She's always loved dance, hasn't she? As well, Annabelle. She has always loved dance and movement, and so she went in with a kind of an appetite, and also her, as we all know, her perspective on life
Yeah.
now has changed because of the loss of Mel, and she sort of threw herself into it. And there was this, God, I mean, there will be forever that sort of feeling around Annabelle, weren't there, of sad. And I hope that she copes over the next year or two. She's doing great, but it's a
She
hell
is.
of a blow. And but the way she danced was very moving, and it was the
Yeah,
way
and
she
a
handled herself
beautiful,
around.
beautiful relationship that sort of emerged between her and Johannes, and it was exactly what she needed
That's a nice
at that
thing.
moment in time. Yeah,
Well, we'll all be there for her if she needs us at any time now. She seems to be throwing herself into everything that she's doing,
yeah.
which is what you would expect from Annabelle. But she loved to dance, and she's that does help. I can't I can't
That definitely helps.
I could have used a bit of love of dance myself, but anyway, didn't quite happen. But you know what? At least I didn't go out first. And if I had gone out first, I would suggest that my contract with GMTV would have shortly followed out the
See,
door.
that's the competitor in you again. Exactly. At least you didn't go out first. Final point. Final because I can talk to you forever. So final point to just sort of end on, because we've come through these sort of highs and lows of this sort of sporting life that became a broadcasting life. Is now commentary in the Wimbledon box on like the final of the men's singles, is that just a complete salve? It feels to me like it would be, and it should be, and it could be. Just commentating over the best players in the world in that centre court arena. I mean, it must just be magic for you.
Yeah, it is. And it was from the first time I did it, because I came to it quite late on the BBC. It was 2003, and the first final was Federer Philippoussis, and I had not expected to be given the final. It's ridiculous, the very thought of it. My dear friend Paul Davis had given me this opportunity. Dave Gordon, the executive producer and a bit of a legend at the Beeb for years, I think he did 8 Olympics, and he was the chief. He came up to me 20 minutes before the first final, that 2003 final, and I had a polystyrene cup of coffee out the back, and I'd done, research is understatement, hadn't slept. And he said, "I just want you to know that I didn't want you for this." And I was like, "Oh." In classic sort of charming BBC or TV exec way, but there was a point, and it was a good one. And he said to me, he said, "Remember, this is not a tennis match; it's an event." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I got it, and we discussed one or two things around that, and he was absolutely right. So it is an event, the men's singles final. It's a different thing, but to sit there in that box with those people and to talk to people whilst probably too much, but no, of course, the boy in me that first hit a ball at 9, the idea of sitting there and watching the players that I have in this generation sitting alongside some of the greats, it's just off the chart. It's you should never think what's next in those situations. You should try and enjoy them for what they are and pray to God you get the words right.
I absolutely adore listening to you on the commentary, and I know so many people do. So thanks so much, Andrew. Keep it going.
Well, it's too easy to talk to you, Georgie, and congratulations to you and for everything that you're doing as well. I agree with my wife. You're fabulous. So there.
Is there an asterisk after that? I feel like there might be.
Brackets? None.
You're too charming. Thank you so much.
It's been lovely to talk to you. Love to Ben too. All the best.